Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Republicans versus Democrats. Is there a difference? Do Republicans deserve your vote? Okay, so it's no secret that both Democrats and Republicans are just working in their own self-interest, right? Neither one of them is actually trying to help the people that they're saying that they're trying to help. Basically, they're just using us for our votes, right? Because they need to get into power. They need to be able to say, "Hey, we have so many people in our party. They showed up to vote." So they do need us, all right. So they want to give us as little as possible. Basically, they want to buy our votes as cheaply as possible. So the Republicans are like, "Okay, you guys want gun rights? Vote with us, and we'll see what we can do about it. We'll help you guys out a little bit, right?" But that's the extent of it, right? They're really not, pro gun rights. So, are they worth our votes, or should we vote third party instead? So the example that I'm going to look at is the founding fathers of this country. Okay, when the founding fathers started this revolution over here, right, against their own government, right, because they were British subjects. When they started this revolution, who did they go to for help? Okay, did they look for another republic, right? Did they go, let's say, to the Republic of Venice? And I don't even know if they were a republic at that specific point in time. But did they look for another republic to help them out that maybe had similar, ideals to them? No. They went to another monarch. They went to the King of France. Okay, they basically used one king to fight another king. Okay, why? Because that king is the one that had the military, that had the money, that was actually in a position to help them. So they made a strategic decision, right? A strategic decision, not based on emotions, but based on what would actually get them to where they want to go. Okay, so one of the greatest heroes of the American Revolution was Benjamin Franklin, because he's the guy that went to France to try to get the support of the French monarchy. Okay, and I'm going to keep saying French monarchy to just hammer that point. Okay, right? He went to a monarchy to help them fight for freedom. Now, when Franklin went to France, the last thing he would have told the French king, right, and his people is that help us because we're fighting for self-rule. That's the last thing you tell a monarch. Okay, that's not what he told the French. What he told the French is, the British over there are your enemy. Okay, help us defeat your enemy, right? Because there was a Cold War basically between the French and the British. Okay, and the French were hesitant to enter this until they saw that, hey, this thing had some legs. Okay, and they waited until the point where the colonists scored a minor victory. We consider it a major victory, but in reality, it was a minor victory. Okay, but it was enough to say, hey, the French king and his people looked at this and were like, yeah, this thing's got some legs. If we support these people, that can be a serious, thorn in the side of our enemy, the English king. All right. So that is the only reason why the French helped the colonists. Now, if you think for a second that we could have won the American Revolution without the French help, my friend, I think you're wrong. That's not likely. The thing to understand is that the American Revolution was very much in part a civil war. Okay, I would say about 30% of the colonists supported the revolution. The other 30% were hardcore British loyalists, and probably the 40% in the middle did not give a shit either way. Okay, so it's not like all the colonists supported this. And one of the things that I have studied is that while this American Revolution was going on, a lot of the colonists were using that as a reason to basically settle old scores with other colonists. Okay, so particularly down in the South, I've heard of lots of a few stories where the colonists were fighting colonists. Okay, these people already hated each other, right? The thing to understand is that if we look at the area of Washington D.C., right, what we call today that Washington D.C. area, okay, the surrounding states almost went to war over that territory. Okay, so that was a disputed territory, and all the states, basically the colonists, right? Because they weren't states then. The colonies were looking out to the territory, to the land in the west, and they wanted to expand into it. The British treaties with the Indians prevented them. So that was actually a driving reason behind this American Revolution. Okay, they wanted, they did want the self-rule, but they wanted to expand out west. Okay, that was a big driving factor as to why they wanted this revolution. So again, these colonies, right? They were all competing with each other over who was going to get what land. And as a side note, one of the things that the government after the American Revolution did, I think it was the Articles of Confederation. One of the things that they did is that, hey, these new territories out there, they're not going to be they're going to be territories. None of the colonies or the states would be able to own any of that land. So that kind of stopped the fighting between the colonies. Okay, so anyway, going back to what I was saying before, important for you guys to know that if the war had dragged out, right, if it didn't come to a somewhat quick conclusion, there's a good chance that the colonies would have just started fighting each other, right? And in fact, during the American Revolution, the Continental Congress, right, was not taking very good care of George Washington's Continental Army. Okay, and at one point they were about to mutiny, right? In fact, I think they started a mutiny where they were going to march over and essentially hang the leaders of the Continental Congress. Okay, so don't take it for granted, right, even for a second, that if the French had not intervened and helped, we would have won. We probably would have lost simply because the colonies would have started fighting with each other. I mean, we fight with each other today. So the same thing was going on back then, right? The colonies would have started fighting with each other. They were already fighting with each other, but that would have gotten more agitated. So what the French did, right, not only did they bring guns, right, they sent guns over, but more importantly, they sent soldiers and they sent leaders like Lafayette, right, who was one of George Washington's greatest general. Okay, they sent military leaders who were in a good position to help the colonists, help the Continental Army. Now, one of the things to understand with George Washington, right, though he's a great man and all that, but he was probably not the best general, okay, in the history of the world. Okay, he lost most of his battles, he had been chased out of New York, right, by the skin of his teeth. I mean, he almost got captured and killed in Long Island. But since he got, since he got kicked out, let me come a little bit closer so you guys can hear me. Since he got kicked out, George Washington had this fixation in his head that he was going to go and take back New York from the British. Okay, he had this fixation, and it was really the French that say, hey, listen, what you're thinking is insane. Don't do that. Okay, but on the other hand, there's this little place over here called Yorktown that seems like it's, we can attack this because, strategically everything looks right over here. Okay, so it was the French that put this idea of attacking Yorktown, okay, which was the victory. Now, the other thing to understand is, why did George Washington win at Yorktown, right? And it was, here's the thing, the Continental Army, not enough. Not even the French army and all the French guns that came over was enough. The decisive thing at Yorktown was the French Navy, which is hardly talked about in the history book. So the thing is that part of the reason why Cornwallis went to Yorktown is because he was expecting to meet up with the British Navy, which never arrived because the French Navy was occupying them. Okay, was keeping them busy way out at sea. Nobody hardly talks about this. Nobody knows about this. But the thing to understand is that at the time, the true wealth of in the colonies for the British was not up here in the north. It was down in the Caribbean. So as soon as the French came into the war, right, the first thing they started targeting, they didn't start targeting the British up here in North America. They started targeting the Caribbean, right, because that's where the money was, right? And then that forced the British to pull more of their navy down there, all right, which again, keeping them busy, keeping them occupied. And ultimately, the French Navy is what created the situation for George Washington to have his great victory at Yorktown. Okay, so that none of that could have been done without the help from the French monarchy. Okay, so and you know, so the point I'm bringing out is look to what the founding fathers did. Right, they made a strategical decision that are we going to look for another republic that shares the same idealistic values with us? You know, like some what we would call today a third party. No, right? They went to another monarchy that was in a position to actually help them get to where they wanted to be, right? So that, in a nutshell, is the reason why I've always voted Republican, and why I kind of switched back to the Republican Party, because after January 6th, after I saw how the Republicans were turning against Trump, and I was never a big Trump fan, right? Mainly because of the bump stock ban and because he was trying to sell off the forests. But I was never a big Trump fan. But what the Republicans did to Trump when they turned against him was wrong. So that's the thing that made me go independent. But now in 2020, going into the Republican primaries, I said, you know what? There's a couple of really good candidates running. If I can get these people like here, like Mastriano here in Pennsylvania, if I can get him elected governor, I mean, constitutional carry is guaranteed in Pennsylvania, and there'll be a whole other bunch of other things that he's going to do to, you know, benefit us here in Pennsylvania. And again, that's going to also create further momentum. You know, so that's the reason why I vote Republican. It's not because I think that they're perfect or even close to good, but I'm using them to try and defeat my enemies, which is basically the leftist socialists, and most of those people gravitate towards the Democrat Party. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little history lesson. You know, and like I said, I don't. We shouldn't look at ourselves, right, and say, hey, we know everything. You know, look to the people that came before us that actually figured things out, because they already figured this stuff out like 200 years ago. They figured out how to win wars, right? The way you win wars is you basically divide and conquer your enemy, right? You use the enemy of your enemy to help you, okay? So right now, the enemy of my enemy is the Republicans. I need them to defeat the Democrats. So thanks for watching. If you're not a member of my channel, subscribe. On Odyssey, follow me at Pocono Tactical. That's my channel name over there. On Rumble, I'm Pocono Guns. On YouTube, my backup channels are Pocono Shooting, Absolute Gun Rights, and the original Safa channel. I have all these channels so I can try to stay ahead of the censors. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you all soon.